The curvature wrap allows you to place the perm rods and follow the curvature of the head. Pie-shaped sections are used as your base subsection in certain areas of the head where it curves within each panel. To start your sectioning, you're going to want to make a high side part. So where the receding area is, we just want to go right at the high side of that. Use your rod to measure so that you know where to start. And we're just going to make a curved parting to behind the ear. And that will be your first section. So we have a curved parting behind the ear. Always make sure that you double check that your rod is going to fit in there. I think I could go just a little bit more, add a bit more hair here. And then my rod should fit. Now once you have that first panel complete, we're going to turn and we're going to do the opposite side. So all you have to do is right from where the edge of this, that should be length of a rod. And from there, we're just going to curve and again go to behind the ear. And then we have our two front panels. And again, check to make sure that this is going to fit a rod before you move on. So now you have your two front panels. So to make our third panel, just going to comb all this hair over, and from the back of this panel, we're going to measure and we're going to follow the curve of the head and go right towards the nape area. So again, we need to make sure that we measure so we know where to start. And we're going to head over to the opposite side of the head. And keep in mind your length of rod. And you can go into a half size rod down in the nape area if you need to. My mannequins are getting a little bit dry. I've added some product. It's called Ready to Go. It's a good product for detangling, and you can also use it with perm wrapping. So if you see some product on my comb, that's what it is. Okay, so once we have our side panel complete, now we basically just have to divide this in half. So we're going to make another panel, again up near the back of our third panel, and we're just going to follow that along and curve to behind the ear. So you can see there's a lot of curved partings. And then you just want to make sure again that your rod is going to fit in both those panels. I think I can make this one just a little bit bigger. and now we have both panels in the back. So that gives us 1, 2, 3, and then our 2 in the front, 4 and 5. So we have 5 panels in total. Now where I like to start to wrap is right in the front panel. Right in here, I like to do this curved panel first, and then my other side panel, then I'll do panel number 3, and then last my back. With a curvature wrap, I usually would never pre-saturate because it takes a little extra time, because you have to determine the curve of the head. And with pre-saturation, you're adding an alkaline perm solution to the hair, and then you're wrapping it, and you need to be very quick with that. It's always a good idea to follow the curve of the head, but we do need to do a little extra, spend a little extra time as we follow the curve here, and pre-saturating might not be the best idea. I'm going to use a combination of the peach and the purple rods for wrapping, and I'm just going to start wrapping. Remember, the diameter of your rod determines the base of your subsection, and I'm just going to continue to wrap, and as I'm wrapping, I'm going to point out with my comb when it is that I need to create a pie shaping. So up on top here, if you think about the apprenticeship or exam wrap that we did, that perm wrap is going to prepare you for this curvature wrap as well. Just make sure your ends are in the paper. Make sure we're following the slant of the head, because remember, we talked about in previous videos how the head slants down here. And use a single flat wrap if you need. So this would be more of a body perm for this client who has this length of hair and with this size of rod. Make sure your elastics are straight. And now you're going to see I'm going to have to start to pivot. So I'm going to keep wrapping, and whenever you see me place my comb this way, you can identify the pie shaping, and that tells you that I had to take a narrow to wide section. And throughout the head, we'll have to use narrow to wide sections. So as you're watching this video, watch for where those narrow to wide sections are. Every head is different though, so just because I'm taking narrow to wide sections on this client, on this mannequin, it doesn't mean that you will have to take them in the exact same spot. Remember, always use your comb, and if your comb is horizontal and it indicates a pie shape, you know you have to take a pie shaped section. So watch for that. You can change your perm papers as needed. I just was using a bookend wrap, and I just switched to a double flat wrap because I know that this mannequin has some dryness happening, but she's the only mannequin I have left. So we can see as I put my comb horizontal now, there's no longer a pie shaping. It's just a rectangle base. So I know I can just make a horizontal section, and that will give me the base section that I need. The subsection, or base section, whichever you prefer. As you get down near the perimeter of your mannequin, you may find that the hair is shorter, and if that is, you can end off with 2 or maybe even 3 of the smaller diameter rods that you're using. Not all the hair, it fell out of the end paper at the back, so I'm just repositioning the end paper, starting over. So here we can see that we have a curve happening. It's following the curve of the head, and that's our first panel. So now we're going to go to the opposite side. And we're going to wrap the front panel here. So I just have to turn her so that my body position is in the right spot. So I'm using a combination of bookend wrap, double flat wrap, and sometimes I might use a single flat wrap if I need to, if I have a lot of ends that are popping up. I had a peach rod here, or salmon color, like cream, whatever you want to call that color. I had that color here, so I'm starting with the peach to continue the alternation of the rods. So now you can see when I place my comb horizontally, it clearly is narrow at the front and wider at the back. So I need to keep following. Just double check your section. If you want to hold this hair with jaw clamps, you can. Just remember, whenever you're perming, try not to use metal clamps of any type. Especially when you're perming light hair, it can cause some discoloration. And that's because the metal can leave a coating on the hair, and that coating on the hair will react with the perm solution, the chemical. Curvature wrapping is great for design wraps also. When you need to design a perm for a client, it's great to be able to have the ability to wrap following the curve of the head. I just used a single flat wrap there because you could see at the back I had a hair that was protruding. So now that I know there was that little bit of layering there, I'm just going to use a double flat wrap for my last one. And now we can see the curve happening on that front panel. Hopefully you can see that curve. Okay, so now we're going to go to our third panel. We're starting our, that's the first panel in the back. And when we wrap, we're starting in the crown area first. So we're going to need to really look at this panel and see how am I going to get, I can just use diagonal lines to here, but then I will have to pivot in order to turn to get going down. So you have to look at each individual client's head shape, and you have to determine what is the best way to follow the curve of that head. And unfortunately, I cannot tell you the best way unless you see the client's hair and the shape of their head. So we're just going to wrap following the curve. I think the key point is that you need to be aware of how to identify when you need a triangle section. So I'm going to just keep wrapping, enjoy the music, and as I'm wrapping, I will identify if I'm taking a pie shaping. Right now I'm just taping diagonal lines. So in here, I'm going to take a pie shaping in order to get around that curve of her head and the curve of my panel. I did two purple. I need to take this out and put the peach colored or beige colored rod. So remember to stick with your pattern. So we can see if I put my comb horizontal, there is still a pie shaping there, so I need to take another narrow to wide. It's narrow at the back and wider near the front. sure I use the right colored rod this time. And now we can see I pretty much can go horizontal here. Double check your sectioning, and if you need to, just use a jaw clamp to hold that out of the way. Also, as you reach your perimeter here, you can go into just the smaller size rod if the hair is getting shorter. Oh, elastic broke. If that happens, just get another one. But those elastics, you can try fixing them. And you can order the elastic separate and replace elastics if you need to on perm rods. Now my mannequin is getting shorter here, so I am going to just continue to wrap using the purple rod, the size smaller of my rod. My subsection is also getting narrower, so I'll make the adjustment and use a short rod, the half size rod. And when you get to the last part, make sure you have all the hair picked up. Don't leave any hair stuck to your mannequin or under the cape of your client. And there we have our third section complete. And now we just have our back. And we can see when we look at the back, we can see how much curve happens in that section. So now these two, I can see where I had it divided. Just double check your sectioning again. We just have the two sections in the back left to do. So we just want to make sure that these are correct and they're going to fit a rod. I'm just going to clean up this one a little bit. And when I'm working on my final section, a lot of times I like to take this hair and place it in a jaw clamp. I know most of my sectioning I've done just by combing the hair out of the way, keeping it damp with the water bottle. Now this section does look wide, but you have to remember you're following the curve of the head. So you just don't want it to be too wide in any spot, but be aware that you're going to follow a curve here. So it's going to be okay. I'm going to start with a narrow to wide, because when I put my comb horizontally here, I'm pretty much okay, but up here I need to curve a little bit just to follow the curve of the head. So I'm going to go narrow to wide, and in here I'm going to start off with a short perm rod. So I'm going to start off with purple. I actually like to use the size smaller rod in the crown. Sometimes I will wrap more of the size smaller in the crown, especially if the client has an issue where they need height in the crown area and their curl pattern drops after a short time. So now I'm going to do another narrow to wide just to follow that curve. So my narrow has been up here, it's been narrow to wide. And now I'm going to do the opposite, and you can see when I put my comb horizontal, I have a pie shaping, so now I need to do the opposite. Wide to narrow. So I have put 2 purple rods in the crown area, and that's for added curl and control, especially if the client has a whirl here that can get a little unruly sometimes for the client. It's nice to make sure that you're away from that whirl, that you're not sectioning it right where it naturally parts. And then when you put your 2 purple rods in there, or size smaller rods, they don't have to be purple, just whatever perm wrap you're doing, use the smaller size rod. You just get a little more control and curl up in that crown, and it lasts longer for the client. So now we're pretty much going horizontal. Remember, keep checking your elastics as you're going. And with the curvature wrap, you can use the perm picks in every 3rd rod if you need to. I'll do one more beige or peach colored rod before I do all purple. Now remember my mannequin was getting short, so I did purple at the bottom, so I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So use your rod, smaller rod size. If it is that you feel you need to switch to the smaller rod size, like if your client's hair is getting short, then go smaller. And down here it's a little narrow, so I'm also going to switch to a half size rod. Try that again. Okay, so now we can see how we made that curve up in here, and then we were able to just go horizontal. And now we have one last section center panel. And this one is usually pretty straightforward. There's a few ways that you can wrap it. You can start off with a short rod right up in the point and just go to a wide rod, or you can start to pivot slightly and to make you horizontal. So I'm going to do the pivot. It's the more challenging way to wrap, and just in case you want to try that way, so you can see I've started with a diagonal line. This is going to be the point from which I'm going to take my pie shaped sections to turn myself around. So again, up in the crown here, I'm going to use a short purple just to keep that crown a little bit tighter. You don't have to do this. You can just keep alternating if you want, but I'm just showing you this technique in case you ever have a client who has issues in the crown area. So now narrow on this side to wider here. And now I can go to my larger rod. So that's all that took, is 2 pivots, and now you can see when I put my comb horizontal, it is a horizontal subsection, so I can just keep on going straight across, target parting, and use my normal horizontal subsections. So you can see we had to curve and pivot a couple of times around the head to follow the shape of the head. So that is the curvature wrap, and basically the sectioning is what starts you off. Just do your section, and then to follow the curve of the head, remember, always place your comb horizontally, and if you see a pie shape, you know you have to do some type of pivoting. And if you see a